Man, thank y'all so much for being here this morning. It's crazy. I hear all the time that this is, quote unquote, the new normal. I don't think it has to be at all any idea of a new normal, but I do want to show you kind of the brevity of what we're dealing with here when we talk about COVID-19, the coronavirus, because we're probably somewhat a little protected here in Picayune. At least it's not really affected us as much as elsewhere. As of last night, 103,000 cases in the United States. I mean, think about this. A month ago, we were really just kind of talking about this being something that was in China that may be coming over here, and it's spread out that much. So 103,000 cases, 680,696 cases around the world. Since it was discovered back in November, 31,000 deaths, but still a 4% mortality rate. And outside of people with serious health issues or I think it's under the age of 60, we're talking about less than 1%, roughly half a percentage. And so at least in our lifetime, this is the first time anything like this has ever happened, first time anything like this has taken place to where we've had to quarantine or self-isolate, but it's not the first time in history. In fact, you've heard the studies that by 1918, the number of people that suffered from the Spanish flu, there were over 100 million people killed from it, more than the number of people killed in World War I and World War II. But also, we tend not to think that much about the Black Plague as well, taking place during the Middle Ages. So the 1300s up until the 1500s, almost 200 years, right around 160 years that it would take place. So the Black Plague, I do want to talk about it for a second because it'll be relevant. I will bring it in, I promise, into the fold. You'll see where I'm going with this. So the Black Plague, lesser common known names, the bubonic plague, the bubonic death, the Black Death. During that time period, they called it the Great Pestilence. And so it would take place, came from the east, right around China, believed to be carried along by the Mongols, and then would hit Europe. By the time it was finished, between 75 and 200 million people would die from the Great Pestilence. They weren't sure how it was carried. Some thought it was through animals, so they tried to quarantine animals or not have animals. Many people just left entirely. At one point in time, since they weren't sure how it was carried, they thought it was carried in bad air. So they actually promoted smoking cigarettes to keep the air from becoming bad, as a way to keep the Black Plague at least at bay. In London, every 20 to 30 years, there would be an outbreak in London, and 20% of the population would be wiped out. And so this really became a great fear amongst many of the people, because once you got it, the symptoms would show up, and within less than 7 days, you had passed away. And one person in every family, a family of 4, would pass away. And so they'd really try to keep it from getting within a household. Now, the reason why we talk about all this, there's a really interesting letter that I think is relevant to us, because we've talked about verses that show not to have fear and to join together, but we have a really interesting Christian response to the Black Plague. And I want to talk about that response and the relevance that it has to our everyday lives, because in 1527, a minister wrote a letter, John Hess, wrote a letter to Martin Luther. Martin Luther, the great leader of the Reformation, put the 95 Theses on the door of the wall of the church in Gutenberg and started the Reformation. If it wasn't for him, there probably wouldn't be Baptist churches. But he received a letter from John Hess asking, why are you still staying around and caring for people? The Black Plague is going on. You need to be quarantining yourself, or the community needs to quarantine. You don't need to be anywhere around them. Why are you doing this? So he wrote a letter back, and the title of the letter is Whether One May Flee from a Deadly Plague. And he gives his response, his reflection on what a Christian, or at least a minister, how they should respond to the great pestilence taking place throughout Europe at the time. And so I pulled out just 4 key points that Martin Luther had to say, and the relevance that it really has to our day and time as well. And here's the very first thing he says: in light of the plague that's going on as Christians, how should we respond? Here's the very first thing he tells John Huss. He tells him, remain steadfast in faith, not fear. Be steadfast in your faith. No matter what is going on in the world, remain steadfast in your faith and not in fear. Because everything that is going around, all the things we hear on the news, all the ways that people are responding, reports of, state lines shutting down and quarantines taking place. It's so easy for us to get caught up in this fear, but we don't have to. Because we have a God that is greater than the fear that we feel every single day. And so I want us to turn in your Bibles to Psalm chapter 91. Psalm chapter 91. And this is a psalm that David wrote, believe it or not, when there was an outbreak taking place in Israel. And this is David's response. The one who lives, Psalm 91, verse 1, the one who lives under the protection of the Most High dwells in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say concerning the Lord, who is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust, he himself will rescue you from the bird trap, from the destructive plague. He will cover you with his feathers. You will take refuge under his wings. His faithfulness will be a protective shield. You will not fear the terror of the night, the arrow that flies by day, or the plague that stalks in darkness, or the pestilence that ravages at noon. Though 1,000 fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, the pestilence will not reach you. You will only see it with your eyes and witness the punishment of the wicked, because you have made the Lord my refuge, the Most High, your dwelling place. No harm will come to you. No plague will come near your tent, for he will give you his angels orders concerning you to protect you in all your ways. They will support you with their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the young lion and the serpent. Because he has set his heart on me, I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. When he calls out to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and give him honor. I will satisfy him with a long life and show him my salvation. David says right here that the one who trusts in the Lord, though everything may be going on around him, he's going to remain steadfast in faith. God will protect him. God will give guidance. And for those who may not have that protection, he'll still give them hope. And that's one of the greatest triumphs that we can have as humans, is hope through even the darkest of circumstances. And Martin Luther could look at everything going on around, and he could say, the issue doesn't come with just the plague itself. It's people that have lost faith, not only in God, but faith in humanity. And we have to remain steadfast in our faith. But number 2, here's the thing about faith that he says you have to be careful for. Don't let your faith tempt God. It's very easy to do so, but don't let your faith tempt God. And what does that mean? Let's take a look. We're going to look over in Luke chapter 13. So move over to Luke chapter 13. Luke chapter 13, Jesus is telling, he will tell a story, but people are going to ask him a question. He says here, at that time, some people came and reported to him about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mixed with their sacrifices. And he responded to them. So they're asking him about people that Pilate had killed. And he responded to them, do you think that these Galileans were more sinful than all the other Galileans because they suffered these things? No, I tell you, but unless you repent, you will perish as well. Or those 18 in the Tower of Siloam fell on and killed. Do you think they were more sinful than all the people who lived in Jerusalem? No, I tell you, unless you repent, you all will perish as well. So these people came to Jesus and they asked him about these Galileans, but he goes on to say the reason they asked this question was not simply about what his thoughts were, it was about who was to blame. Because the Galileans, did they deserve what Pilate gave them? And he said, no, it's not about just who's simply to blame in this matter, because they had this idea known as the doctrine of divine retribution. You do something bad, God will punish you. You do something good, God is going to bless you. I mean, that was the whole point of the Pharisees. They're going to do a lot of great things so that you can see how much God has blessed them. Well, what if you do something bad? What if something bad happens to someone? So that's what they asked him. Did these Galileans do something bad that Pilate punished them? And he said no. He also said, what about this Tower of Siloam? The tower fell on people. Were these people bad? Jesus said no, these people weren't bad just because this tower fell on them. And see, here's the great thing is that we are called to have faith, but here's where Martin Luther, as well as I think many of us can tend to fall today. We think that, well, just because I have faith that God is going to take care of me, I can do whatever I want to during this time, because God's going to call me home when He's decided. Well, Martin Luther says, well, that's great that you have faith, but you're testing God by doing this. You're putting other people's lives at jeopardy. And when we have this mentality that God is just going to give me what He's going to give me, Martin Luther would say that gives us no room for prayer in our lives. That no matter what we do, we feel like God's just got His plan out to what He's going to give us. There's no reason to reach out to Him and ask Him for help. It's great faith. But sometimes it can be difficult. And when Jesus is telling this story, He doesn't tell them that the reason the tower fell on these people was because it was God's punishment on them. He told them something different. You need to be ready in case it ever happens to you. Don't test God. Don't allow your faith be a test to tempt God to see whether or not He's going to punish you or save you. But in case something like that happens, you have to make sure that your heart is prepared. So number one, remain steadfast in faith, not fear, but don't let that faith test God. Number three, and this corresponds to point number two, not allowing it to test God, we do have to be responsible in how we care for one another. Because truth be told, as believers, we are obligated as a family of God to take care of one another, but we have to do that in a socially responsible way. Just yesterday, I received, maybe you received this too, it's from the White House. It's President Trump's coronavirus guidelines for America. Did anyone get this? Yeah, everybody got one of these. It shows you how to social distance. That's now become the big key word. And point number one, walk through some of these because we've heard them, but it does show how we can best care for one another while still being socially responsible. Listen and follow the directions of state and local authorities. If you feel sick, stay home. Do not go to work. If your children are sick, keep them at home. If you're an older person or have a serious illness, stay at home away from other people. If you in your household is tested positive, keep the entire household at home. Work or study from home. Avoid social gatherings in groups of more than 10 people. Avoid eating or drinking at bars and restaurants. Use pickup or delivery options. Avoid discretionary travel. Do not visit nursing homes or retirement centers. And practice good hygiene. See, it's social distancing has created a new dynamic within the church, because part of ministering to people is being there to minister to them. And so it's completely forced us to reevaluate the ways we have church and the ways that we reach out to one another. Because we do have a responsibility to take care of one another, but we can't let our faith be ways to test God so that we don't cause negative effects on the people around us. That's just being socially responsible. And so today there are many churches who still have canceled service, but one great way that we've been able to continue this is through the use of technology. And so we've got churches with FM, instead the drive-in the drive-in service that's going on in Mill Creek. We're outside and we're enjoying the weather, and we've got speakers that are blasting. We have recordings that are going to put this on Facebook whenever everything is over. So we can make the most of this as best as we can to still reach out, to call one another, to check in on people. And so that's at least what I'm going to do this week. I'm going to make it an effort. I recognize I'm not great on social media. So I'm going to try to make a better effort to reach out to people on social media, to spread the gospel, to share the good news. And so that's going to be my challenge this week. How can we use the technology that God has provided for us, that we've discovered, that we've been blessed with, to reach the people around us? That becomes an excellent way to share the needs, the burdens of the people around us. Because as James chapter 4, verses 14 through 17 states, read that really quickly. He's talking to a group in his church. He has very rich people and he has very poor people. And the rich are not wanting to take care of the poor. So he says here, to the rich, in verse 13, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will travel to such and such a city and spend a year there and do business and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring, what your life will be. For you are like a vapor that appears for a little while and vanishes. Instead, you should say, if the Lord wills, we will do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil, and so it is sin to do what is good and what is not good." And he goes on to say, "What is good? What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but does not have works? Can such a faith save him? If a brother or sister is without clothes and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, stay warm, and be well fed,' but do not give them what their body needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith, if it doesn't have works, is dead by itself." And so we, of all people, should know that during this time, we need to be establishing relationships with people that build them up, not tear them apart. And James is saying that we need to be more than just words. During this time, we do need to come together. And I'm so proud of this church and what we came up with to do tonight, to actually live this out, to go and provide for people who are in need. And so if you are able to come to that, I encourage you to do that. I think it's going to be a fantastic ministry opportunity, because we are called to help, but we have to be socially responsible in that. And then finally, we'll share this, and then this will be the last point. Do understand. She booped me. Do understand, during this time, as I'm sure you've seen quite readily, the devil thrives on fear and panic. He thrives on it. He loves it. And so our last passage we'll look at is John chapter 14. Be looking at verses 19 through 27, and how we, as believers, can respond to that panic. So John chapter 14, verses 19 through 27. Jesus is telling this to his disciples. Now, he's doing this. They've had the Last Supper. They're walking to the Garden of Gethsemane. While they're there, he's going to be captured by the officials. Judas is going to turn him over. He's going to be crucified. Their whole world is about to be shocked and completely turned upside down. As they're going, this is like his final words, his last testament to his disciples. He tells them in verses 18. We'll start in verse 18 down to verse 27. He says here, I will not leave you as orphans. He knows he's about to go to the cross. So what can you say to these disciples who have no idea what's about to happen? I will not leave you as orphans. I am coming to you in a little while longer. You will no longer see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you will live too. On that day you will know that I am in my Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. The one who has my commands and keeps them is the one who loves me, and the one who loves me will be loved by my Father. I also will love him and will reveal him to me. Judas, not Iscariot, said to him, Lord, how is it you're going to reveal yourself to us and not to the world? Jesus answered, if anyone loves me, he will keep my word. My Father will love him and will come to him, and our home will be with him. The one who doesn't love me will not keep my words. The words that you hear is not mine, but is the Father who sent me. I have spoken these things to you while I remain with you. But the Counselor, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and remind you of everything that I have said. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Don't let your heart be troubled or fearful. He understands that the disciples are about to lose everything. There's going to be so much fear. There's going to be panic. There's going to be chaos that's going to ensue. So he's telling them, you do not have to fear. Because that's what the devil wants, to get our gaze and our attention and our focus off of Jesus Christ. That's what happened with Peter. Walking on the water, he kept his focus on Christ. He was doing great. But the moment that he let the fear of the world, the panic, the chaos of seeing that these waves are getting too high, it distracted him, and he began to sink. And that's our testimony. When we take our focus, when we take our gaze off of Jesus Christ, we will begin to sink. So as believers today, in 2020, as the coronavirus is going around, we're not supposed to meet in groups of more than 10. Here's what I have to tell you today. Here's what Martin Luther had to say when the Black Plague was going on in Europe, and here's what still applies in the 20th century today. Number one, remain steadfast in faith, not fear. God did not create us with the spirit of fear. He created us with the spirit of faith. Number two, do not let your actions tempt God. We still have a social responsibility to everyone around us. But with that said, we are to care for one another. We have to find ways within our own setting to be able to do that. And number four, do understand, Satan will do everything he can to distract us because he thrives off of fear and panic. Just recent news broadcast saying that New Orleans is the new epicenter, or could be the new epicenter of the coronavirus because of Mardi Gras. That was over a month ago. And it could be the new epicenter. All of this is just fear-mongering. It's not journalism at this point. You do not have to live in fear. The devil will try everything that he can do to make you panic. Do not fall victim to that panic, to that terror, to that fear. There's no reason for it because God has overcome this world. And no matter what may be thrown at us, we can take comfort in the shadow of his wings. But if you don't have that faith, it's going to be very easy for you to fall victim to all of that fear and panic because you may not have given your life to the Lord in the first place. So that's what I call us to do. We're not going to have an invitation today, but whether you're sitting there, whether it's at home, wherever it may be throughout this day, if you do need to ask Christ to come into your life or at least to remove this fear from you, now's a great time to do it.